Now we're joined by Monserrat, who will share her story. Do you want to go ahead and share your story?
Sure. Thank you for having me, by the way. I guess this happened when I was 18, so I was pretty young. I'm 23 now, so that was several years ago. But at the time, I was student council president, and I had just finished planning prom. I had just finished the yearbook, and I was thinking about what I'm going to do next. Probably major in art because that's what I had always loved. And there wasn't really much that I felt would be difficult for me to overcome to achieve these goals. So where I live, I'm pretty sure they teach abstinence only. But I had the internet, so I knew what precautions to take, and I had taken such precautions. But I guess I invested just a little too much faith on a piece of plastic. So it didn't work out for me. But I knew about Plan B, and I knew that it cost a lot. So I gave my boyfriend half of the money, and I said, hey, I need you to get this for me. We have 5 days. And he said, okay. And then 5 days later, he said, well, I prayed about it, and God told me that there's nothing to worry about. And I said, okay. And he had bought some cigarettes with the money. And I said, okay, I was raised Catholic, but I was not religious. So I did not feel that I could pray for reassurance that he was right. And as it turned out, he was wrong. So we called his mom because we certainly couldn't call my dad. He's also raised Catholic and would certainly disapprove of what was happening. But we called his mom, and she laughed, and she said, well, pray about it. So I attempted to ask God, hey, this is not the time. I'm sure you work in mysterious ways, but I certainly don't have the abilities to take such liberties with it because we're a lower income household. We live in a trailer, and I am working to get us a future. I want to bring my family a future where they are financially stable. I want to give my children a future where they are financially stable. And maybe I wasn't adamant enough in such a suggestion because it ended up I was pregnant. And my boyfriend at the time said, well, what we need to do is carry it to term and you can give it up for adoption and it's fine. And I said, no, because I know that giving a child to adoption is not safe often. A lot of children go through sexual assault when they're adopted, when they go through the foster system. In particular, children that are part Latino, children that are of any color, who are not Caucasian, they struggle a lot more to get adopted. So I said, we're not going to do that. This is not yet a child. And I cannot put having a child over raising a child. So I sold all of my things because I did not have the money. I think it was around $500. Then Planned Parenthood lowered the price for us. But I had to sell a lot of my things to get the money because I didn't want to ask my dad for the money. And I didn't want to tell anyone about what was going on. My boyfriend arranged the ride for us, which took around 4 hours because we didn't have a Planned Parenthood near us. We got to the clinic several hours later from one of his friends who promised that he would keep this secret, which was nice of him, although he lied. But he said he would be discreet. At the time, I believed him. So we got to the clinic, and it was something I wasn't ready to accept yet. It was fairly early on, so I knew that, you don't create a child within conception. That's not how there's a process that you have to go through. There was no heartbeat yet. There was, it's just, at the time it was just embryonic. There's not a child there yet. It's not yet conscious. So I took a little bit of comfort in that. But of course I knew that, you know, this would eventually, if given time, turn out to be my child. So it was a difficult decision, and it was difficult, and I was terrified of what I was about to do because of the possibility that was in it. You know, I don't regret it in the least, because the cycle of poverty is vicious, and I knew exactly what would happen because several of the girls at my school had gotten pregnant since middle school because their family members had raped them, or because their boyfriends had not given them a choice, or because, plain and simple, they were not informed about the consequences or about even what was happening to them. So I knew that from a very young age, they would have to raise an entire human when they themselves were not yet women. And after that, the child would get older and it would grow up in poverty. The mother would be working full-time. The father would be working full-time. They would not be able to educate this child. They would grow up in poor neighborhoods with poor education, and the cycle would continue. I was not ready to I was supposed to be the one that exited that cycle. And I was not ready to have my family members onward continuing that cycle either. So when we got to the clinic, I was late arriving there. So I had to wait several hours in the waiting room, which was difficult. I was probably one of the youngest ones there, actually. The majority of the women there seemed old enough to be mothers themselves, maybe 30s, 40s. No one was really talking, and everyone was just thinking about what they were going through, which I understand. I guess it wasn't the kind of time where I was going to ask them questions. But once my time of waiting was up, they went and gave me a blood test. Then they said, yep, you are pregnant. Then they did a sonogram, and they didn't show it to me, which I hear is a requirement in some places that they show it to you, which is cruel. One, because you already know what you're doing. You are very much aware of what you're doing. And you're not doing it because you get a kick out of it and because it's fun and because you're just a horrible person. You're doing it because you understand the consequences. And torturing women for their choice is wrong. Onward though, I got to the clinic and the doctor sat me down on the bed. He was very calm and he said, don't worry, I have done this on girls as young as 11 years old and they're all fine. You're going to be fine. He walked me through the process. He told me exactly what he was doing. And it was difficult. It was painful, physically and emotionally. And when I got up, they said, it's done. We went to the sonogram and they said, okay, there's nothing there. And I asked them, you know, a little naively, this doesn't hurt the baby, right? And they said, don't worry, you were early enough. Then we drove home and I entered a pretty difficult time emotionally because I couldn't speak to anyone. I was, you know, most of my friends were judgmental of women who in any way had sex, who in any way expressed liberties. So I knew that they would not be okay with this. So I didn't speak to anyone about it, and my boyfriend himself didn't seem to be all right with it, but it had been my choice and I had been adamant about that. I would have done it whether he was okay with it or not. particularly because I felt I had been robbed of the choice I had taken from the very beginning. So this perhaps is not necessary to add, but my husband now, he and I met shortly after that. And it was at a time when I held myself responsible and I blamed myself for what I had done. And I certainly didn't think that I was worthy of being treated as a human because of what I had done. So I was going through a very difficult time accepting my decision, even though I knew what I had done was right. The fact that I had been pressed to this decision was very tough to come to terms with. But my husband, he was the first person that I ever told. And when I told him, he said, "I think you made the right decision, because no one understood your situation better than you did. The government certainly wouldn't have understood your situation. Your father is not the one who would have had to take the situation. Your boyfriend did not even seem to understand what was going on." And he said, "No one knows why you had to take the decision better than you." And I said, "Well, I was raised Catholic. What about God? What about the judgment that I'm sure to get?" And he said, "If there's someone who would understand, I'm sure it would be God. And if he's a merciful God, then he will understand. If he's not a merciful God, then why would you even want to be a part of that?" And I said, "You're right." So he was part of the reason that I came over here to speak. I know several women in my town who have had abortions, but I don't tell them that I know. And I certainly don't want to speak to them about it unless they are ready. So the reason that I came was because I want them to know, if they are going through the same thing that I did, this was a choice you knew you had to make. And you're not going to be by yourself through it. You can speak to me about it. And even if you're not in my town, I think it's important to know you made the choice, and I'm proud of you. And I know it was hard, because it was for me. But we are capable, and we're going to continue to give the choice to other women, because this is us, and we deserve it.
Thank you so much for your story and for those wonderful words for everyone who's out there listening and, has had an abortion.